remind our viewers that if you have a question during today's Kaffeepause, you can use the Q&A function in Zoom, and I will do my best to fold your questions into the conversation. We'll give it a few more seconds, another minute or so for people to tune in, and then we'll get started. Good afternoon to our viewers in Germany, and good morning to our viewers in the United States. Hello, I'm Steve Sokol, the president of the American Council on Germany, and I'd like to thank you for joining us for today's Kaffeepause. At our Kaffeepause, we check in with a journalist based in Germany to talk about the news stories behind the headlines. And today, I'm delighted to speak with Henrike Rosbach. She's been a correspondent in the parliamentary office of the Süddeutsche Zeitung since early 2018 and also serves as the deputy head of the paper's parliamentary bureau. Henrike, herzlich willkommen.
Thanks for having me.
It's good to see you again, and I'm very much looking forward to our conversation. With the European parliamentary elections less than 3 weeks away, campaigning is heating up. And at the same time, the governing parties in the Ampelkoalition seem to be sort of jostling against each other as they try to hammer out a budget for 2025. Against this backdrop, can you share with us how you see the political mood in Berlin at the moment?
Well, there are some tensions within the government because everybody knows that the budget negotiations are going to be very tough this year. They have been tough the years in 2023 and 2022, but this year it's special because there is no more way to raise the debt as high as the government wants to, because in Germany there's something called Schuldenbremse, which is basically a debt rule in the constitution, and it says that there are limits to how high the government may raise new debts. And in this year, the budget that the Ministry of Finance says we have to hit is lower than in the last year. And then the different ministries had to tell the Minister of Finance, who is Christian Lindner from the Liberal Party, how much money they want to spend. But upfront, he had told them already how much money they are allowed to spend. But there are a couple of agencies, offices, and ministries that said, no, we are not sticking to what you tell us. We tell you how much money we need. And for example, the Foreign Office or the Development Agency, or especially the Ministry of Defense, they told the Ministry of Finance that they need much more money than they are allowed to. And nobody knows so far how this is going to work out. But until July, there has to be a solution for the problem. And otherwise, the government will have a real problem to stay together for like the last 1.5 years until the next elections.
That's right. I mean, elections are next fall. Federal elections are next fall, and so this is a very important time. But let's unpack this a little bit. You mentioned the Schuldenbremse, the debt brake, which is enshrined in the German constitution, and that there's not really much of a way around it. Is there any discussion about sort of lifting the Schuldenbremse or relaxing the debt brake?
That is something that especially the Social Democrats, which is the party of the Chancellor Olaf Scholz, are in favor of, and also the Green Party would like to change or to alterate the Schuldenbremse so that more flexibility would be possible concerning the debt. And there are also ideas that, for example, the expenses of the Ministry of Defense, that they should not be implemented in the Schuldenbremse, that they should be considered on top. But so far, this is not possible because of the constitutional status of the Schuldenbremse. And to change the constitution and to change the debt rule, you would need 2/3 of the parliament. This is something the government coalition cannot do on their own. They would need the help of the biggest opposition party, which is the Christian Democrats. And right now, it's not in their best interest to do this because they see that the government has a lot of problems, the coalition has a lot of problems surrounding the issue of the Schuldenbremse, and why should they help them? They are right now in a far better situation. When you look at the polls, the Christian Democrats, the CDU has like 30%, and the Ampel coalition, which is the Liberal Democrats, the Social Democrats, and the Green Party, they have round about 30 plus something percent, but all together. So why should the Christian Democrats help them? And the other thing is that the Liberal Democrats do not want to change the Schuldenbremse. They say we have to get back to normality after Corona, after the attack of Russia on Ukraine. This is the new normal, and we have to deal with the world as it is, and we cannot solve our problems by raising the debt all the time.
So related to that, and you've kind of touched on this, because of the COVID-19 pandemic and because of the war in Ukraine, there have been sort of some special funds that have not been affected by the debt brake, by the Schuldenbremse. Is there any chance of using any of these special funds to get some of the additional funding that some of the ministries, like the Defense Ministry, the Foreign Office, or even the Development Ministry, want to try to push through?
There is a special fund, especially for the Bundeswehr, for the Ministry of Defense, but this is the only special fund that will work out for the years following, because there had been the Supreme Court, the German Supreme Court, which is called Bundesverfassungsgericht, made a decision in the fall of last year saying that these extra budgets that had been existing in various numbers are not constitutional, because they cannot be used any longer for more than the year in which they have been implemented. You cannot say, okay, we have a natural disaster, for example, in this year, a flood or something, and we open up an extra fund with debt, and we use this fund the next year and the year after and the year after. And this is something that the court said, no, you cannot do this. This is against the constitution. This is against the Schuldenbremse. So it is way more difficult than it used to be to open up new extra budgets. And the reason that the budget for the Ministry of Defense and for the Bundeswehr works is because this budget is also in the constitution. But this also was only possible with the help of the Christian Democratic Union in the Bundestag. And they said in those days, in the beginning of 2022, yes, we will do this together with the government, because we see the threat by Russia and we see the problems with the war in Ukraine, and we have to raise our expenditure and our military budget. And so they did this together, but they are not going to do this again. So this is a door that is kind of closed as well.
So it's been interesting to sort of follow the wrangling around the budget over the last week or so, and at least from the press headlines that I saw, there was definitely Annalena Baerbock in the Foreign Office talking about needing more money. Certainly Boris Pistorius, the defense minister, saying that he needs more money for defense, but then also Hubertus Heil saying that, the labor minister, that he needs more money as well. And most recently, I saw some reports about Svenja Schulze, the development minister, trying to make the case that development work is well invested because it's about much more than putting money into development, but rather trying to reduce dependencies on China, and made the argument for all of the raw materials that Germany needs. What's been interesting is that these have all been ministries that have been led by Social Democrats. Is most of the tension between the Social Democrats and the Free Democrats and Christian Lindner, the finance minister, or are the Greens, also an important coalition partner, affected by the budget debate?
Well, the Foreign Office Annalena Baerbock, she's from the Green Party, so she's
Yep.
the exception in this rule, and so she's pretty much the only one from the Green Party, and also the Liberal Democrats. Of course, they stick to the rule because Christian Lindner, the Ministry of Finance, is also a Liberal Democrat, but it's very interesting and difficult for the coalition that especially the Social Democrats are saying, no, we're not sticking to the budget, because Chancellor Olaf Scholz said to Christian Lindner when they were discussing how they are going to negotiate the budget this year, and Lindner always says, I talked about all this with the chancellor, and the chancellor is on my side. And he said yes to this kind of procedure, yes to me telling you how much money you're allowed to spend. So Lindner, Scholz, and the deputy chancellor Robert Habeck from the Green Party, they are on one side of this debate, but on the other hand, Olaf Scholz is under pressure from his own Social Democrats, because they are the ones that are saying, no, we're not going to stick to what Mr. Lindner told us. We need more money, and we don't care how he's going to do it, but we need it.
How united do you think this trio of Scholz, Lindner, and Habeck is?
How what?
How united do you think they are?
Well, usually it is said that the trio works kind of well together. But the thing is that all of them are under pressure when it comes to their own parties. Even Christian Lindner, he and the Liberal Democrat, he's also the head of the Liberal Democrats. Robert Habeck and Olaf Scholz are not head of their parties. But Lindner, he has the problem that the Liberal Democrats are right now only at 5% in the polls, and this would make it difficult for them to be part of the Bundestag again. So if they fall below 5%, they might not be back in the Bundestag after the next election. So he's under a special kind of pressure. And the Social Democrats, they have ideas with the Schuldenbremse and everything else that go in a whole different direction than what the Liberal Democrats want. And the sooner, the closer the election, the federal election comes, the more important it is for the parties to tell the voters what they are standing for. So, and I don't think that it will be easier for the trio to work together because the pressure will rise. And I think after the European election, which is in June, you will see that the results will probably in Germany not be very good for all the three parties. And afterwards, we'll see how they are going to work together for the next months to come.
Mm-hmm. And we'll get to the European election in just one moment. I have one more question about sort of the budgeting and the budget issues that are going on, because just today it was announced that the Free Democrats would release their 5-point paper on I guess, generationally just budget process, right? A generationsgerechte Haushaltspolitik. And the idea behind this is, on the one hand, to make sure that it's not the young people that are covering all of the cost for the old, but also that any changes to the budget are not carried out on the backs of people who are retiring, going into retirement from work. Do you have any sort of initial insights on this 5-point paper from the FDP and how it's been received by the other parties?
Well, the Social Democrats said that this is kind of ridiculous, and they do not want to raise the pension rate, the pension age, or the retirement age, which is regularly 67 in Germany, but you can retire earlier when you've worked 45 years. Yeah. So this is something that is used more often than they anticipated when they invented this rule, and it is very expensive, and there's labor shortage in Germany, and the economic situation is not very good right now. So the Liberal Democrats, they say, the FDP, we need more workforce, not less. So we have to stop making it interesting for people to retire earlier than 67. But this is something that the Social Democrats are really, really against, because this is something that is like in the center of their political understanding, that after many, many years of working, you have the right to retire earlier. And this is something they invented when they were in the coalition with the Christian Democratic Union. And the chancellor already said that he is against raising the age, the retirement age. But I think that this is probably not going to be solved within this government, but maybe in the next, after the federal election, there has to be a pension reform, because the country is aging, and the system is very expensive, and it's getting every year it's getting more and more expensive. There has to be taken more money from the regular budget to stabilize the pension system, and this is something that will be figured out probably in the next government. But right now, the discussion is on, and maybe something will be done, like making it more attractive to work longer. But I'm pretty sure that the pension and the retirement age will not be raised in the next months.
So let's come back to the upcoming elections, right? Because in just a few weeks, I guess in less than 3 weeks at this point, the European elections will take place. And you've indicated already that the current governing parties are not doing very well in polls, but that the opposition party, the Christian Democrats, are doing much better. And then, of course, just a few months later in the fall, are elections in 3 Eastern German states. And here, the governing parties are not polling well either. In fact, the Alternative for Germany, Alternative für Deutschland, and the Christian Democrats are polling much higher. How is campaigning going for the European elections that are coming up?
Well, campaigning definitely started. It's visible all over the country, but there have been some incidents in the last weeks. Some campaign workers have been attacked while trying to hang up what do you say, for
Posters. Yeah.
posters,
Yeah, election posters, election
yeah, and
signs.
they had been attacked, and even local politicians have been attacked. One of them had to go to the hospital here in Berlin. Franziska Giffey, she's the senator for economics. She had been attacked as well, and the atmosphere is really very rough and kind of aggressive, especially when it comes to like local politicians, because they do not have the security as the politicians on a federal level have. And in some parts of the country, the parties are not that well organized as they are in others, which leaves a lot of space for the Alternative for Germany to be successful and to recruit people. And especially in the East, it's difficult for the parties like the Christian Democratic Union to have enough supporters and enough helpers within the electoral campaign. And the more rough the atmosphere gets, and the more attacks are happening, it's less and less attractive to do something on the local level as a politician, or as a campaign worker, or as a just supporter. And this is something that is very much discussed right now in Germany, how the people can be protected. But the idea of the kind of politics we have in Germany is that those who work in politics, they are reachable. They are not like somewhere far away, but they have their electoral home base where they go to and where they meet people, and they try to be in touch with like the normal people. And the more difficult it gets to do this work, to do campaigning, and to be safe, the less attractive it is to be there. And this leaves even more space for the extreme parties and for extremists. So this is very much discussed right now in Germany.
But what's interesting is that it hasn't just been sort of the more mainstream campaign workers who have been attacked, right? It has been, yes, there have been Social Democrats, there have been Greens, but there have also been some AfD campaign
Yes,
workers who have been attacked as
that's true.
well.
Yeah.
And yet it seems as if there's real concern that there could be more far right-wing violence against some of the mainstream parties between now and the June election, but then also with a view to the elections in the fall. What is being undertaken to try to put a stop to some of that violence?
Well, the parties, they have security measures. They don't go alone. For example, if they hang up posters, they are always together. They try to sometimes they have media with them, but that there have been even attacks where a media team with cameras had been there. So it is difficult. You cannot have one police officer for every campaign worker hanging up posters in the German countryside. So
Right.
the thing is, what the parties are doing, they are setting up teams. They go together. They try to be not on their own, yeah, and they try to mobilize more supporters of the Bürgertum in the countryside. So, but the problem is that you need the people. Yeah, you cannot do it alone. So, but what makes me optimistic is that when we had this incident with this conference of the far right, where they met in Potsdam and talked about how to get rid of people who are born in Germany but have a migration background and something. And then there had been huge demonstrations all over the country for tolerance and for an open society. And this is something that I think was an important sign also for politicians on the local level, that the majority may be silent sometimes, but is willing to speak up when the democracy is really in danger. So
Mhm.
this is
Right. I
probably
mean,
the only way.
this was a meeting that took place in November, but then the story broke, I guess, in January of this
Yeah.
year, and it led to literally thousands of people taking to the streets in towns across Germany, demonstrating against the AfD
Mhm.
for these kinds of plans.
Yeah. Yeah. But as you said, the AfD is also attacked. It is all the parties, and there is an
Yeah.
atmosphere in the country that all the politicians are the same, and that the mood is getting more extreme. It's like they against us on all sides. And some people say that this already started in like 2015, the first time when many migrants came to Germany, and this was when
Mhm.
the rise of the AfD began. Others say that the COVID pandemic was also some like a trigger point for this society, for the development in society, that it's they against us, and it's the idea that there is um that the government and politicians cannot be trusted. And this is something we probably all have to work on, but it's not easy
Mhm.
to solve. It's something that you
Yeah.
probably can experience in the US as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of uncertainty and a lot of agitation in the political mood on both sides of the Atlantic.
Mm.
Enrique, you covered the CDU's party conference, the Christian Democrats party conference last week, and the leader of the party, Friedrich Merz, came out saying that the CDU is ready to govern, is ready to lead, and even had a comment something along the lines of, each day that the current government continues in power to be in power is a bad day, and that his party is ready to take over. As you mentioned a little bit earlier, in polls, the Christian Democrats are doing quite well with 30%. That is at least quite well compared with the other parties who are well below that. Um, what were some of your high level takeaways from the party conference? And do you think that Friedrich Merz is the Kanzlerkandidat, the candidate for chancellor from his party?
Well, they didn't make it official when they had the party conference, and this was their plan. They are going to announce their candidate after the fall elections in the eastern states you already mentioned. And but right now, pretty much everybody in the CDU says if Friedrich Merz wants to be the candidate, he will be the candidate. The only one who can stop him is himself. If if either he says I don't want to, or if he makes a severe mistake, and otherwise he probably will be the candidate. And what I noticed when I was at the party conference, I realized that the party is very much united again, and the CDU is a party that um, thinks of itself as a party to govern. Yeah, they don't consider themselves as the usual opposition party. And for 16 years, they had Chancellor Merkel sitting in the Bundeskanzleramt, and then they lost the election, which was a big shock for the whole party, and they had to find out who they are and what they want to stand for. And they did that by setting up a new program. It's called Grundsatzprogramm for the main ideas, what the CDU wants to stand for, what their values are. And Friedrich Merz, he's the opposition leader in the parliament as well. And this is a new role the party had to find, and I think they managed that so far. And right now they're doing well in the polls, but of course they're not doing well enough when you consider how bad the government parties are doing.
Mhm.
And the problem is that the AfD is very strong right now, and Friedrich Merz always said, we are going to keep them small. We are going to show that the voters that they can come to us. They don't have to go to the Alternative for Germany. But this is so far not working out, especially in the East. And this will be a huge problem in the fall when the elections will take place in Brandenburg, Sachsen, and Thüringen. Especially in Thüringen, it might be pretty difficult to get a government. It could be any coalition, but it has to be a coalition against the AfD. And this will be difficult. And sometimes in the CDU, they still discuss that the polls are not as good as they should be. And this is something that Friedrich Merz has to figure out, because he's the leader of the party and the leader of the opposition, but he's not popular. He's not a really popular figure. He's more popular than Robert Habeck and Olaf Scholz right now, but there are other leaders in the CDU who are more popular,
Mhm.
like Christian Wüst of Nordrhein-Westfalen and Markus Söder of the Christian Social Union in Bavaria. They are way more popular, and so this might be a discussion if the CDU will do better with a different candidate for their
Mhm.
chancellor.
I think part of it depends on how Merz leads the party into the European elections, and then how the Christian Democrats do in the East. If the Christian Democrats don't do well in either of those elections, then maybe the likelihood of his being chancellor candidate is weakened, especially given that Markus Söder and Hendrik Wüst have such strong popularity among Christian Democratic voters. But
Yeah,
we'll
well,
have to see.
yeah, we'll have to see definitely, but I think they will do pretty well in the European election. And in
Saxony.
Saxony, they will do well as well, but the AfD right now is stronger in the polls. The problem are the two other states, and but
Yeah.
everybody in the party knows that this is a very that those are very special elections, and it does not really have to do too much with Friedrich Merz himself.
Hmm.
But they will do a lot of campaign work there. They are the base, the party base there is not very strong in the east, so many people from Berlin and from the west and other countries are going to campaign there, and Friedrich Merz as well. And so they will put in a lot of effort and a lot of work, and afterwards we'll see. But I think it will be less the outcome of the elections and more how Friedrich Merz is doing in the next month, if he will do any
Hmm.
mistakes and or not.
So that's certainly something to watch and something to follow. I have two other sort of questions related to this, and one is, you've alluded to this a little bit in our conversation that the current government, the Traffic Light Coalition, is in a very tense situation, and there are obviously some internal conflicts. The popularity of the coalition is not very strong. Do you think that the coalition will hold until the fall of 2025 when the next German elections are scheduled to happen? Or do you think that there is a real possibility that this coalition will collapse?
I used to say that this coalition will last because the alternative is so unattractive for all of them. The FDP is doing very bad at the polls. They might even lose all their mandates in the Bundestag. The Social Democrats are right now, I think, at 15 or 16% in the polls, and the Greens are pretty much where they used to be in the last election, but this is far away from what their ambition is. So it was always more attractive for them to stick together and to sit it out. But right now, I'm not so sure anymore because the budget discussion is
Mhm.
really going to be difficult, and I do not see how they are going to solve this, because if the economic situation would be better and there would be a higher tax outcome, everything would be easier. But the economic situation is weak, and especially Christian Lindner and the FDP wants to see something, what they call Wirtschaftswende, which is a change of the
Yeah, an
economic
economic turnaround.
policy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they want to see reforms, and the others are not so much in favor of doing something like this. Um, but the Green Party wants to do something too, but in totally different ways. Yeah. So
Hmm.
everything is like they are on hold for somehow they are like locked into each other, and I do not really see how they're going to solve this. But on the other hand, it's not that much longer. The election campaign you will start like in the beginning of next year. You realize that we are already in the campaign mode, and maybe they will just, I don't know, stick together and sit it out and tell their voters we're trying again next time.
Yeah.
It's hard to say. It's hard to say, definitely.
So related to this, though, the Christian Democrats appear to be the strongest party at the moment, but not strong enough to govern by themselves. They'll need coalition partners, regardless of when a new government comes into place. The question is, who will they be able to govern with? You alluded to the fact that the Free Democrats are sort of polling at about 5%, and there are questions as to whether they will even pass the 5% hurdle and be represented in the Bundestag. A number of leading Christian Democrats have said that they would not govern with the Green Party. Um, it seems as if another grand coalition is almost pre-programmed. What are your thoughts on who the Christian Democrats could govern with?
I think that's really way too early to tell. I mean, even if the FDP will be represented in the next Bundestag, they probably will be weaker than they are right now. So, and even if the CDU is stronger than they are right now in the polls, it probably will not be enough. So they have to govern with one party from the other side of the political spectrum. So this would be either the SPD, the Social Democrats, or the Green Party. Right now, I don't know. I would not say that the Grand Coalition is like pre-programmed, because Friedrich Merz himself never said that he's not going to govern together with the Greens. Markus Söder in Bavaria, he says that he cannot think about how this should be working to do a coalition together with the Greens. But Friedrich Merz always said we have to talk to all the parties, all the democratic
Mm.
parties, of course, the Greens, the Social Democrats, and the FDP, the Liberal Democrats. And we cannot say that we're not going to do this or that. So the option is there, but within the CDU, they are skeptical when they see how the Green Party is working right now and what they are standing for. So you need some fantasy to
Yeah,
imagine a coalition. But on the other hand, when it is necessary to form a government, they will find ways. Yeah, but
yeah,
I right now I would not be able to say that it's like the CDU and the Greens, or the CDU and the SPD are. We don't know that. But
yeah,
they never said we are not going to do it with them or with them.
yeah. So I guess one last question, as we talk about sort of the party landscape, and that has to do with this relatively new party, the Bündnis Sarah Wagenknecht.
Mhm.
What sort of a role do you see Sarah Wagenknecht playing as all of this sort of plays out?
That's hard to tell because I mean they are very, very new, so the polls are not that reliable so far. We'll see how they do in the European election, which is like their first test, and afterwards in the eastern states, they might be quite successful. But the other parties, they when you ask somebody from the CDU, for example, could you think about a coalition with them, they always say, well, we don't know what they really stand for. We haven't seen their program. They are not much more than their party leader, Sarah Wagenknecht herself. And it's still some kind of a mysterium. So we'll
Mhm.
see how they do in the elections in the East and in the elections in Europe, and then afterwards. But I'm pretty sure that they will not be like a huge player with like 10 or 15%,
Mhm.
at least so far. Well, you never know, but in the federal election, they might be represented in the Bundestag
Yeah.
if they do well, like 5%, 6%, but nobody can tell.
Yeah, it's way too early for that, given that it's such a new party. And obviously, we'll have to sort of wait and see how the left party, the Linkspartei, does. They're struggling at the moment. And we'll have more information on where Bündnis Sarah Wagenknecht is drawing its voters from, whether it's from the AfD, whether it's from the Linkspartei, whether it's from other parties. So lots to watch, lots to follow. But Enrica Rosbach, I'd love to thank you so much for joining us today and for having this conversation and for pointing out some of the issues that we really need to be paying attention to in the weeks and months ahead.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me.